In French, to clear one's throat is to have a cat in the throat. Avoir un chat dans la gorge. One needs to spit out a cat in order to clear one's throat. Literally, un crachat is a spittle. By juxtaposing languages, you sort of question the stability of a language. So you question its authenticity, its originality, because if you put two languages side by side that are quite similar in history or that have shared a history one way or another, but have also separated or come together or whatever, then you see differences and similarities. By speaking languages that the audience might not know in my work, I also place the audience in front of their own sort of the languages of the world that one doesn't know, and that's a reflection on, again, knowledge, the bound to one's knowledge, the bounds to one's belonging. So again, that is sense you realize that there's so much, this is nearly banal to say, but there are so many languages I do not know, and therefore there are so many ways of communicating that I don't know anything about. How does one keep one's body as one's own? What does this mean but the relative safety of boundaries? Could I make sure that what I called my body would remain in the transit from other languages? That it would hold this progression into English? Ironically, Crop is one of the first and only more explicitly autobiographical pieces that I write. It's written in two sections. The first section is very autobiographical, and I describe, in fact, my trajectory through my own sort of background of languages, and also through sexuality and my own sort of a lot of different aspects of my individualized sort of experience. And that is then followed in part two by a reflection on this idea of what crop and cropper, which is in English is also about breaking or sort of interrupting, and growing is part of to do with growth in agricultural terms as well. And it's also to do with some kind of a disease in the throat. I mean, it's a very complicated, yeah. And of course in Scandinavia it's bodies. Some never had a body to call their own before it was taken away. Som aldrig hade en kropp de kunde kalla sin egen för det blev revet bort, så dont le corps d'emblée leur est arraché. Some never had a chance to feel a body as their own before it was taken away. Som aldrig fick uppleva en kropp som sin egen för den blev revet bort, så dont le corps d'emblée leur est arraché. Some never had a chance to know their body before it was taken away. Som aldrig fick känna sin kropp för den blev revet bort, så dont le corps méconnu d'être arraché. So there is that sense of thinking about, again, the body as a border, and there's a lot of violence in that text and a lot of disappearance. I use all that as a way of reflecting on language, body, violence applied onto singular bodies or collective bodies that have been to which you give an identity. So this idea that you apply violence on particular kinds of people, again, particular kinds of kropper, is very, is nearly the bottom line of that piece. And I keep on repeating that over and over again in these three languages through the development of that piece. So it's also nearly like it's mournful, and it's also a reminder of notions that violence exists in language and can be applied very easily to actual bodies, actual lives. Some or many are being disappeared, någon eller många är blivit borta, ont été disparu. English is my third language, but it is my main operative language as an artist. And I think that's very important. Because I place myself within the politics and the histories of that language as someone who's had to learn it, as someone who, therefore, I don't go to it in an intuitive manner. I go to it in a learned way. I have an accent when I speak English. And all these things confirm the motifs of my work. It's a language that has itself been made of so many other languages that it's very, very prone to accepting all the time other languages and being transformed into other languages. And that's also a very interesting dimension. I think the creolization of English is very important and interesting. Some arise in some or many of us, någon reiser sig i någon, eller många av oss levt en nombre de nous. Some that arise in some of us arise in many. That concern or that interest or for different languages, for knowing, not knowing language, or knowing, not knowing languages, and the kind of communication that cuts across languages and cultures. That interest has helped me develop a number of ways of writing. So it's also made me a writer, because you sort of develop methods that you think can carry that power of that question to others, and it sort of pushes my form, it pushes my modes of working. English speakers don't so much struggle with cats as with frogs. It's a croaking frog that one would need to spit out in English. Given the dubious and long-standing historical traffic of culinary jokes and insults between the French, frogs, and the English, roast beef, and bearing in mind the old wars of invasion and occupation between the two countries, one could speculate that having a frog in the throat resonates more with military and political history and the known influence of French on the development of the English language than with strictly contemporary matters. Not so, however, if one believes the American poet John Ashbery and his line, "I hear the toad crooning."